Well, if you're the fanboy, I am the shit hitting the fan on this episode.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. Joe here with Kramzer. We're going to be doing a fun one tonight. No Jason, as you can see, just mono a mono. We're going to do the discography of Muse, a band with wildly diverging opinions, people in America against people in England. The press, especially music press, loves them over in England. Not so much here in America. They've never quite caught on. You know, they had a couple radio hits here, the edges of the Billboard 100. Nothing huge, but a bunch of big albums, big singles over in England, especially all across Europe. So they're huge over there, moderately big here, and we should have some fun kind of opinions, I'm sure, between us and between our commenters as well. So I'm excited for this one. What did you know of Muse, Kramzer, before we started this?
Origin of Symmetry, Absolution, and Black Holes. I was into them like once Absolution came out. I was really into like the heavy piano rock, whether it was like them or Coldplay or whatever. So yeah, that was like the height of my fandom. You know, they're not really my cup of tea so much. You like them quite a bit. They are a album of the year winner for you. But yeah, much like Coldplay around the mid 2000s, I feel like they changed a good bit of their sound, not as drastically as Coldplay went, for sure. That is a month-long video I could go on and whine about. But yeah, like when Black Holes came out, I felt like they kind of ditched the piano and really got big with their sound, and it changed my perspective. But yeah, and then I've heard stuff after that, just singles. But this is my first go around with 5 of the 8 albums of Muse.
Well, yes, 8 albums, as Kramzer mentioned. First one came out in '99. So they've been around for a while, but only 8 albums in 22 years. Not prolific, I would say. Very steady in their pace, nothing out of the ordinary. So we shouldn't be too long of a discussion today, but we'll make it interesting anyway. I, as Kramzer mentioned, big Muse fan. Black Holes, I'm not going to spoil it, but it was a album of the year winner and did very well, showing on the ranking of the whole decade. So I've always really liked them since I first heard Absolution in 2003 or 4, and especially Chris Wolstenholme, the bass player, big influence on me growing up and playing bass. Really love him, but I love the whole band, so I'm going to be fanboying out on many of these records, so don't hold that against me. So let's begin. Let's go with your lowest. I'm very interested to see your ranking. I don't even care about my ranking because it's kind of boring. But someone sort of a neophyte to the Muse whole discography. Very interested to see what you're gonna have at the bottom. Take it away.
Well, if you're the fanboy, I am the shit hitting the fan on this episode. But you know, certain things about Muse. One thing I've never understood, other than the way Matt Bellamy does one of the techniques that Thom Yorke does, I've never really understood the Radiohead comparison other than his voice and like that quivering, which, you know, they have. Matt Bellamy is a talented guy. I don't think he's Thom Yorke and, you know, his craft or delicacy, but he's not a bad singer. I'm with you that the bass work on here is the star of the show on almost every album. So let's start at the bottom. My number 8 is going to be the newest release, Simulation Theory. I can only imagine that this is just like a love or hate record because it is so much, it's so different than everything else in a way. They go all in on just like 80s retro love. It just plays like a huge 80s sci-fi like homage, lots of synthesizers, and even the cover of the album, I believe, is the same artist that does the artwork for Stranger Things. But to me, that's kind of where the ideas begin and end. This is pretty much the same old Muse thing by numbers, same salad, different dressing. I've got this one at the very bottom with a pretty bad score, to be honest. I've got it at 1.5. I really did not like this at all. Sometimes some of their cheesiness works for me. Sometimes some of the silliness works for me. This has almost none of it. And the main reason why I dislike it so much is it's got like all of my least favorite Muse songs that I've heard and songs that I don't care to know at all. I thought the song Pressure was really bad. Propaganda pretty bad as well. Has like that weird Fatboy Slim breakdown thing. It's got like Prince wannabe singing style. Found it pretty cringeworthy. Break It To Me was really obnoxious and had like almost like a Britney Spears kind of sexy way of when he would go break it to me. It just none of it really felt natural. Something Human had this weird like George Michael world music flavor to it. I'm going from 1 star to 1.5. The 0.5 coming in because they did try something completely different and really went all in with it. It just, none of it clicked with me at all. So number 8, Simulation Theory, 1.5.
Well, I got it in the same spot. It is my number 8. Obviously, I don't hate it as much as you. 1.5 is really, I mean, that would make it one of my least favorite albums of all time if I had it at 1.5. I got it at 3 stars. I think it's interesting. I really like Algorithm. And the first time I heard it, I was like, okay, they're really like going all in, like Daft Punk does Tron soundtrack. And I was all about that. Like, push it as far as you can go. For me, I kind of take the opposite track as you. I don't think they went far enough with the electronica and the techno stuff. Like, it still sounds like Muse to me. Something like Dig Down is like a half step away from Madness and some of the stuff they've been doing for about 10 years now. So I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more. After this, with Drones and the Second Law, these just kind of feel like remixes of stuff that they were doing there. I think Thought Contagion's pretty fun, but even that, it's a little too familiar to themselves. And I really wish they would just go all the way with it. I like Dark Side, but it kind of just sounds like Black Holes and Revelations stuff with a little more like electronica in. Propaganda, that one produced actually by Timbaland. So they brought in Timbaland for that one. But it still kind of sounds like Muse. It's kind of like the Foo Fighters thing where they keep saying like, oh, we're going to do something different this time. And it's like, well, it kind of just sounds like Muse again to me. So I don't hate this one, but I don't listen to it much and kind of get as much as I want from their other albums. I don't really need to hear them kind of attempt half-heartedly to do electronic and techno and whatever else. So yeah, it's not great, but I don't know. Something maybe they can build off of and go even further with. For me, I want like a straight like Daft Punk techno kind of stuff.
I agree with you on a couple things. Algorithm is the best song on there, and they kind of go through these eras where they are really redundant of themselves. So yeah, those last 3 albums, you kind of seem all similar. The first ones, like with the piano stuff and the class, like the Philip Glass, like wannabe, like that happens in like every other song over the first 3 albums. So they tend to get redundant. Speaking of that, my number 7 was my number 8 until I got to Simulation Theory. And I'm probably already going against the grain here. I've got also at 1.5 stars, The Resistance. Really did not like this, but I can see why this might be like some people's favorite Muse album because it's very musy. It just, because I don't really like many or most of the elements of Muse, don't care for it at all. Seems like the same melody over and over and over, so overblown, an insult to their influences. I don't feel like they're embracing them at all. the backing vocals, I don't understand what like the motivation is other than them just going into the studio and go, make it sound like Queen. Like there's no other thing. That's all that you just go, we love Queen. Make it sound exactly like Queen. There's nothing else to it. And this concept is just full of just like redone cliche ideas. It's barely even any really different than Absolution in like its themes at times. You know, I think there's a lot of I'm not going to use the P word, pretentious word that you love to throw around, but pretty cringy for me, throwing in like the Chopin at the end of United States of Eurasia. Couldn't stand that. I think Guiding Light is a decent song. MK Ultra was all right. Don't really like that trilogy thing towards the end. But yeah, this one is just fanfare for fanfare's sake. I feel like every song is just an audition for the soundtrack of the Watchmen movie coming out at this time. And yeah, there's not much. There's just not much of their stuff that really evokes anything from me. And so this one was just kind of obnoxious and all over the place. 1.5 stars, number 7, The Resistance.
I'm definitely not surprised by that because I do think it is Muse's most musy album. Like that is like Muse at like just full on, just completely over the top. We're gonna write a symphony. We're gonna just totally tack on as much stuff as you can. So I totally get that. Clearly, I'm gonna have a different take on it, but I'm not surprised that you would put that one there. My number 7 is going to be The Second Law. Definitely interesting. Is kind of their first, well, not first foray, but they're kind of getting into like that glitchy kind of techno stuff. A little more electronic elements and less of the Queen bombast. There's still lots of Queen bombast that they really started adding on The Resistance. That's really when they kind of slathered the Queen on as much as possible. But I like this one. It's a 4-star album for me. I love Madness. I love the madness. The kind of, switching up the vocals, making it a little less classic rock influenced. There's something like Panic Station with one of my favorite Wolstenholme bass lines. Love the double stops and the slap bass, big octaves. Kind of sounds like The Cure a little bit. There's some 80s stuff, especially in the choruses. A little more experimental, I think, than anything they've done before. All the Muse albums, right from the first song, really, on Showbiz, like they're going to be bombastic. Like they're always over the top. This one, maybe a little less so. I think it runs together a little bit too much in the middle. But I do like when Wolstenholme takes the mic on Save Me and Liquid State. Interesting change up. I think Save Me sounds kind of like the Doves, and Liquid State has a great, bass line all built around his stuff, which is cool. I like that they, I like Bellamy a lot. I love his vocals, but they can be, 8 albums in a row of it. Like I liked the little change up they do with Wolstenholme taking the vocals. And the last 2 tracks, they get real glitchy. And, I don't like when they break in with like the fake news stuff and the weird kind of, I don't even know what they're going for on The Second Law, kind of sweet at the end. But it's a good album, plenty of good songs. Supremacy, Madness, Panic Station, but maybe a little bit dip in the middle. And I don't know, there's just something missing. I think the tracks maybe just aren't quite as good as usual. Maybe I'm missing some of the Queen influence. So I get it 4 stars, but it's fine. It's good.
I definitely don't think Bellamy is a bad vocalist, but I don't think he's terribly inventive all the time. I think he does a lot of the same stuff over and over, but he does write some pretty good melodies at times. Number 6 for me is going to be Black Holes and Revelations at 2 stars. Really didn't like the big extension of the sound here. You get this big, massive, expansive wall of sound. And I feel like Absolution had like that nice, walked the line really nice with their compositions where everything had a nice epic touch to it. Everything had like some grandiose to it. Felt really like important. this one just takes it too much for me. Although I will say the bass work on here, I like how it flourishes. It really let him run wild. It's also great on Absolution. I think Take a Bow is decent. Starlight's not bad. Can't stand Knights of Sidonia at all. Map of the Problematique. A lot of stuff that I just find just really just too overblown. It's just way too overproduced, like that big stadium sound that like U2 and Coldplay are doing. There's just no, I don't think the songwriting is very good. I think it's just all about the explosive nature of this epic feel. You know, I think some of the imagery and the style of like the space western kind of stuff is kind of cheesy. Thought City of Illusions or City of Delusion was pretty cool. I like that little trumpet thing going on there. But yeah, it just didn't you know, it's tough for me to really connect to this band because all of the things and adjectives that I use for music that I love aren't really present with Muse. They're not an incredibly emotional band. They're not really personal, not too introspective. They're not very romantic. I don't find them that, you know, philosophical or profound. Some of the playing is really good, you know, no doubt, except the drum work. I'm never a big fan. I think that's the weak link here. I think it's just kind of like the same old, just stadium rock drumming cliches that really just kind of bring it down for me and make it a little uninteresting. I like that it's loud and intense at times. You know, I just think they kind of recycle it over and over and over. So yeah, I'm going 2 stars on this. Black Holes and Revelations, number 6.
Can't believe you went after the drumming. That feels like a low blow. Love me some Dom Howard. But anyway, my number 6 is going to be Showbiz, the debut. Very cool. It was the second one I heard after Absolution. I went back and checked out Showbiz from 99. Starts off kind of basically the same template that Muse would follow for the next 20 years with the great piano playing of Sunburn, really fine bass work, really over the top emotional vocals. There's some really good standouts on here. I love the bass work on Muscle Museum and Philip and Cave are all just amazing. Like Wolstenholme's really kind of guiding the show. But there's some kind of weirder tracks that don't quite, you know, I think Muse and Matt Bellamy are still trying to kind of figure out how to write good, powerful, straightforward songs. Some weird detours on here. Lots of good stuff, though. Like I said, Sunburn, right from the drop, loved it. I think Matt Bellamy is one of the great arpeggiists of all time. Love his synth work, his piano work, fantastic. I think his guitar playing is very interesting and unique and not, you know, there's a couple times he'll make a Brian May show of it, but a lot of times a lot of noise and feel over like technical showcase ability. And I think he does the noise aspect really well on this album in particular. Maybe, I mean, I can see where people thought they were like Radiohead on something like Cave, which has like the really Radiohead, like coda after the main part of the song, that, you know, come in my cave, and he's soaring up to Tom York falsetto range. And yeah, I get some of the bends in there and maybe a little OK Computer, but I don't really think they do a whole lot of the Radiohead stuff other than his voice can get into Tom York, but he's a little more operatic and like purposely over the top. And it kind of all starts on here. Like the template is set. I just think this one's a little rougher. The edges need a little smoothed off a little bit. And Matt Bellamy doesn't quite have his voice as much as he would a little bit later. But it's a cool record. It's definitely the biggest outlier, I think, as far as their discography. So I give it 4 stars, and it's a cool one.
Yeah, I also have Showbiz next at number 5. It's decent, simple rock. You know, they're not doing anything too crazy yet with the writing. You put it the best, where it's like it's the Muse template right off the bat, but a little rough around the edges. They've got good energy. When they're bringing the energy, I like the album, but I think the slow stuff on here absolutely kills the momentum of this album. Like a song like Unintended, just like really just puts it down big time. And yeah, I would say even his technique, Bellamy is a little not where his peaks are yet, especially when he's going 110%, which is 110% of the time, and he does the high pitch at like his ferocious maximum effort. It doesn't sound that good. It always sounds fine pretty much after this. But the album plays just kind of long. It's very slow, kills the momentum for me. Yeah, it doesn't have quite the nice, sensational kind of composition that some of the later stuff will. So I've got it at number 5 at 2 stars, Showbiz.
Okay. My number 5 gonna be Drones from 2015, I think. A little bit of a return to the harder rock sound right off the bat. You got really riff heavy Psycho, Reapers with that really cool like Van Halen-esque drum intro, really great. I don't know if it's tapping guitar, but really cool sounding guitar. I think it's a really good album. I think they've, 16 years after the debut, they're not slipping much at all. It's starting a little bit though to sound like stuff they've already done. Mercy and Dead Inside kind of just sound like Starlight and Madness that from Second Law and Black Holes and Revelations. There's nothing too far out of their comfort zone. There's still a lot of riffage. There's still some of that electronic influence, lots of, piano and synths and everything else. I think at this point I was looking for maybe a little bit out of the box, a little more growth. I like the return to the rock. And I think their guitar riffs are the best since Absolution. The Handler, Defector, Revolt, all big, powerful riff, guitar, heavy tracks. Don't notice the bass that much on this album. I think Wolstenholme kind of was tempered since Black Holes and Revelations. He kind of steps back a little bit. Second Law, a lot of good stuff. But this one, he's a lot of following kind of the basic guitar lines. The Globus is cool, closest they probably get to prog rock. A lot of Queen in this. You have those double track little vocal flourishes that Kramzer hates. And something like Drones, which is pretty much like Soldier's Poem, slightly reworked. So I like this album a lot. It didn't make my top 5 in 2015 because I really like 2015, but I think it's a very good record, but it just sounds a little bit too much like what they've already done before. Great songwriting. I think the production sounds amazing, but just starting to repeat themselves a little bit.
I have Drones at number 4. I don't think I can say great songwriting, but I do think this one, with the return to rock, has a nice mix of putting on some nice like hooky pop sensibility into the melodies a little bit, like in Dead Inside, pretty good. I don't think they're ever that bad lyrically, but I also don't think they're ever as good as like these big grand themes kind of make it seem like they want to be or think they are. And Bellamy, as good as he is, like running the octaves, and I don't think he has a ton of attitude or character. And I think what he's saying in the lyrics of Psycho, when he says like "your ass belongs to me," it feels really bad to me. It doesn't work at all. He's singing it like he sings everything else. Like he's just not performing the character of the song at all for me. That Mercy was pretty bland. That little piano part sounds like it's exactly lifted from How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, the U2 album. But I do like the guitar on pretty much all these albums. That was one of the big takeaways for me is I think he is a pretty creative guitarist. I'm not always crazy about the production is good. I always think they have the right amount of effects coming in and little like tweaks and sound effects or whatever it is. But sometimes I think the way they mix everything is just too like in the same like low end bubble, and then just Bellamy's up here like especially when the fuzzy bass is really rocking and like the bass drum is hitting, I feel like everything just kind of settles down at the bottom too much, and I just want a little bit more kind of like sharp and electricity. And I feel that way big time on this album. I'd probably like it a little more if it were a little brighter with some of the high like guitar parts. Thought Revolt was not a very good song, but I'm going up to 2.5 here just because I kind of like the blend of some of the better melodies I think that he's come up with and just some of the guitar forward stuff. Yeah, like the guitar in the middle of Reapers is really cool. So yeah, I'm going 2.5. Number 4, Drones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people out there who think Matt Bellamy is like a great lyricist, but I do like his constant anti-war, kind of anti-global, like, war machine kind of thing. And I think he's not subtle about it. It's pretty obvious at what he's going for, especially on Drones. But I appreciate the anti-war stance that he's constantly taken, which will surface again a little bit later. My number 4 is going to be The Resistance. It's basically like Star Wars in 1984, kind of just mashed together. A lot of Queen. I think, like I said before, this is Muse's most Musey album. It is just constantly overpowering. Like everything is just turned up to 1,000. Like, space opera. You got like 1984 and Eurasia and Thought Police, and just it's way over the top, definitely ridiculous, but I love it. I think building United States of Eurasia off of Chopin's Nocturne in E, brilliant. That is my favorite classical song ever, and I think the way it just kind of transforms at the end into it, just beautiful. It is their Bohemian Rhapsody, basically, and I can't get enough. A lot of big bass, especially on Resistance. Really, Wolstenholme's climbing up there, making. He's a very interesting bass player. He's always kind of not fighting, but working within the song, because Bellamy's not the most overpowering guitar player. Like there's some sparse stuff. The guitar's not even. I would say the piano and the synths get more of the attention than guitar, especially on an album like this. So he's always got to be doing interesting things to kind of keep the bottom end, the rock, keep the song grounded in rock. And I think he does some really great stuff on Resistance and United States of Eurasia, Uprising. Something like Guiding Lights. If you don't like Queen, you're just not going to like this album, because there's a lot of Queen influence. You got the kind of Queen backup vocals, and the guitar solo in Guiding Light is just straight up Brian May. But I think it works. I don't think it's too overt. You have songs like A Natural Selection, MK Ultra, just Absolution era, kind of just speedy hard rockers. And then you have a full symphony, 3 parts that Matt Bellamy wrote himself, which is pretty darn impressive. If you're going to go over the top, you might as well just take it all the way. And nothing is more over the top than having your own symphony on your rock album. So I don't apologize, and I think Muse would back me on this. They don't apologize for going all the way on this one, but I can also see why someone like Kramzer would not like it. So I don't hold it against him. But for me, it's a 4.5-star album. It was a top 5 in 2009, and I love it. So not sorry.
All right. My number 3 is going to be Origin of Symmetry. Got it at 2.5 stars. It would be 3 stars. I like the sound. I like kind of how, it's not yet to that black holes point for me yet, where I feel like everything's too overblown. It's a little bit more than Showbiz, not quite as much as Absolution. To me, the problem with this album is it just doesn't really have any standouts on it. I think some of the standouts, like the ones you mentioned on the debut, like Cave and stuff like that, are, those are lasting songs here for me, but nothing here really jumps out at me. Maybe Megalomania at the end, but yeah, like with Newborn right off the bat, it's decent. None of these songs are really that bad. You get Newborn and it's like, okay, this is Muse. this is their formula. They do it. It's a slow build. It explodes. It crashes. And then there's a shredding guitar part and then an operatic lift, piano chords, kind of always ripping off Philip Glass in this era to me. I'm a big Philip Glass fan, and I just feel like it's all the same stuff. There's some very questionable vocal choices on here. Like, I think some of the stuff he's doing on micro cuts is really weird and kind of unattractive. I think Feeling Good isn't too bad of a song. It's got some decent personality on it, and actually Dark Shines is good too. So I kind of like some of the later stuff on the album, but overall it's just so much just gray territory. Just, not good, not bad. It's not tipping it in any way. So I'm going 2.5 at number 3, Origin of Symmetry.
Okay, my number 3. Probably have this at number 1, I'm guessing, unless you're going to pull a shocker. I got Absolution as my number 3. It was the first one I heard. Introduced me to the band. Fell in love as soon as I heard, well, wasn't love, I think, until I heard Hysteria. And I just had to learn that bass part, and I did. And that was my Wonderwall that impressed no one because it was on bass, but I'd bust that out at parties and people would be like, oh, cool, great, it's a bass, no one cares. But I was impressed by it, and some dudes were impressed. Not so much the ladies, but the dudes, they dug it. I think this album's very cool. I think this is sort of another continuation after Origin of Symmetry, a little denser, a little louder. Apocalypse Please and Stockholm Syndrome and Blackout and Butterflies and Hurricanes, just relentlessly, it's like being in a hurricane. Like, it's just constant wall of sound. And I think this, more than Black Holes and Revelations, is sort of their loudest, most in your face consistently. Hysteria with that bass line, just amazing. I like the groove of Time Is Running Out, another killer bass line. Love the drums in that one. One of my all-time favorite drum songs. The climb into the chorus is just phenomenal. And I think everything on here sounds great. I was actually kind of down on this album for a little while, maybe because I just listened to it too much, but I think it's maybe their best mix of like all the eras. Like, they do the slower songs, I think, a lot better on this than they do on the debut. They have some kind of straight up ahead rockers like The Small Print and Thoughts of a Dying Atheist. They're just really good, like, alternative hard rock songs. There's nothing too musy about them. They're just really good, straightforward rock songs. But then they do stuff like Butterflies and Hurricanes, where it's just like, okay, this is Muse, obviously. There's just walls of sound and operatic vocals and great arpeggios and everything else that you want from Muse. So it's a really good album. I had it, didn't make my top 5 in a very strong year. It might make it if I did it again, because I'm back up on my Muse. So 4.5 stars. I think it's great. It's probably what people should listen to first. I think if you're getting into the band, you haven't heard a Muse album, maybe start with Absolution.
All right. My number 2 is The Second Law, and I've got it at 3 stars. So, which for me is good. So I've got 2 Muse albums that I at least like a decent bit. I was really high on the first part of this album. I thought Supremacy was kind of classic Muse, like a big cinematic triumphant opener. And then Madness, which I couldn't stand as a single when it came out. But it played much better for me this time, having not heard it in the last 7 or 8 years. Still some stuff about it I'm not crazy about, but I think as a whole, it's a really good piece of songwriting for them. Pretty good guitar solo on it too, I would say. Pretty cool, really well written. Panic Station's awesome. One of my favorite Muse songs, without a doubt. You get into Prelude and Survival, and now you're getting back into kind of the same old Muse stuff, which pretty much takes you through the rest of the album. Although Survival is more tolerable, of like a style that I found on Resistance, but in a similar vein. Follow Me is another just kind of like typical Muse by Numbers track, but with EDM sounds in it. Animals I thought was cool, really good bass groove. I actually like the drumming here. It's one of the only songs I have noted where I think the drumming stands out, and I think you can hear the Radiohead in that song a good bit. Explorers I like a lot, and I think Big Freeze has a really cool sound and vibe to it. A little bit of like some of the synth work on here reminded me of the score to Never Ending Story a little bit, which I was cool with. I'll take that. And I agree with you, changing it up. The singer for Save Me and Liquid State was just a really nice, like, coming up for air moment for me. Sounded like a completely different band, and I thought it was good. So yeah, I think this is a good album. Second Law, number 2, 3 stars.
Okay, my number 2, and they just remastered this, and they the version they put out is very much different. I was very surprised to hear all the changes they made. Origin of Symmetry. I don't know which one you listened to, Kramzer, if it was the remastered or the original, but they did kind of change things up a lot on the remaster. They even added a new song that they'd left off, but it's a very good song, and it actually improves the album even more. So the remastered might be 5 stars for me, but I'm going with the original, 4.5. I think it's just a very good kind of build upon the template that they established on Showbiz. I think the riffs are just better. I think the songwriting's better. It's catchier. You got those huge synths and this huge bass right off the bat in Bliss. You got Space Dementia with a longer, almost proggy, very space opera kind of stuff. And then you get into the backbone, I think, of the album, and 2 of my more favorite hard rock riffs in Hyper Music and Plug In Baby. Just when Hyper Music first heard that one, it didn't sound like anything else I don't think I'd ever heard. Just the way kind of like pinballs between the riffs, the low and the high, and then kind of dissolves into this like climbing bass riff. Really cool stuff. Awesome bass line, awesome guitar. And then same with Plug In Baby, kind of a nice breath of fresh air into the kind of bigger, more operatic sound that they kind of got into with Newborn Bliss and Space Dementia right off the bat. And then I like kind of the weirdness of the second half. You get the like straight up operatic vocals. Like he's not even like mock opera, like he's going all the way like opera. There it is. You don't like it, too bad. And Screenager, Dark Shines are all kind of weird, feeling good. It's a classic. Who wrote that? It was written by Leslie Burkus and Anthony Newley for the 1964 musical The Roar of the Grease Paint, The Smell of the Crowd, and made popular by Nina Simone. And I think their version is pretty cool. Kind of comes out of nowhere. You don't really expect like a 1940s, 50s, whatever kind of song on here. And it fits in, I guess, with the weirdness of the second half. I kind of feel like it needs like a hard rocker though. And in the remastered edition, they added Futurism before Megalomania, which is just a really kind of hard charging, like good old fashioned rock song. And I think it breaks up the weirdness perfectly. And then you get in the giant over the top Megalomania to finish it off. I really don't have any complaints about this album. I think it's all really good, really cool sounding, very unique, great bass work, great drum work, great guitar work. It was never released in America because Maverick wanted him to redo the vocals for Plug In Baby because they thought it sounded too feminine. So they like shelved the album. And I see a lot of that on this whole album. He's not afraid to get like, the feminine vocals and sort of be weirder than I think people were comfortable with in 2001. So I appreciate the band sticking to their guns, saying F you to America. It was huge in Britain, so they didn't lose any sleep over it, I'm sure. And just a really great album, 4.5 stars, my number 2.
My number 1, sticking to my guns from almost 20 years ago. The first album I knew, the first album I liked. It's going to be Absolution. Obviously, no worries of a trifecta here since you and I differ, but Jason did say this would be his number 1. I think this is just a really good, like you said, alternative rock album for 2003, 2003, yeah, for 2003. And it's different because the guitar is taking not second stage, but really third stage to the bass and the piano, which that's the main reason why I got into them at that time. At the time, I was so into just everything was just guitar, guitar, guitar. And even if it wasn't heavy hard rock guitar, it was soft acoustic stuff. So for something like this, it just sounded different to me than everything else. And I really like it. Still kind of held up in that regard. I think there's nothing too crazy about like the songwriting here. I think it's really pretty well crafted, just for being good hard rock songs with pretty interesting parts shoved in there. And definitely some great piano work and amazing bass work, of course. And I think really this is just easily the batch of songs that just stand the test of time for the Muse that I like. Apocalypse Please, Time's Running Out, Sing for Absolution, pretty much everything here. There's not really a song I dislike. I think maybe it tails off quality a little bit towards the end. It's almost an hour long, but it doesn't really feel like that, to be honest, because it's got a really good pace, momentum. And unlike the first couple albums, I think the slow stuff on here don't just work, but kind of elevate the whole thing, to be honest. So yeah, I think this one is just the prototype Muse album. It was very close to going up to 3.5 stars, but if I look at every 3.5 star album I ever gave, this would be like one of the weakest ones. Oh, fuck it. I'll go up to 3.5. 3.5 stars, the best Muse album. I mean, it's got to be 3.5. There's at least 5 or 6 songs that I genuinely like here. 3.5, Absolution, best Muse album.
Give you a golf clap for that one. Appreciate you bumping them up to 3.5. I'm sure they'll be very excited to hear that. My number one, is it the only album I haven't talked about yet? Black Holes and Revelations. I just think this is the pinnacle, the peak of a great rock band, everything they learned previously. I think it's actually less dense and a little more intimate than Absolution. I think they kind of rein it in a little bit. I think the mix is really good. You can really hear all the instruments kind of separately. Absolution kind of had a wall of sound going. And they bring in the electronic stuff a lot on this. Straight off the bat, you have Take the Bow with that hypnotic synth sample swirling in the background. Direct attack at George W. Bush in the Iraq War, which, good for you boys. That was not a popular stance back then in 2006, I believe. But they go for it, and I like that. I think Starlight sounds great, just real crisp sounding. I love the synths. I love those arpeggios. Matt Bellamy, you compare them to Philip Glass. I don't know. I just love them. I don't care about anything like that. I think it's never too busy on this album. Like there's not just like additions for addition's sake. I think everything is just spaced out nicely, plenty of room to breathe. You have something like Supermassive Black Hole, which is great dance vibes. And you go in the map of Problematique, which is definite Depeche Mode, big kind of rolling synths in there, cool guitar line, great drums on that one. There's lots of grandiosity here. There's lots of over the top. Knights of Sidonia sounds like Ennio Morricone, basically. A lot of that kind of like Italian sort of like not space. It's like a Western in space, basically, is how I always describe that track. Got like those mariachi horns and just really cool guitar line. Definitely doesn't sound like it, almost doesn't sound like a guitar. He's purposely trying to emulate a song that I think his dad was on from the 60s called, what is it? Telstar from the Tornadoes from 1962. And it's very cool, like old school sounding guitar riff on that one. So I love that. I pretty much love every track on here. I think they get sort of normal on something like Assassin, Exopolitics, City of Delusion. Just good, like hard rock. Love the Spanish guitar on City of Delusion. Hoodoo's kind of like a real kind of stripped down, like weird track. Same with Soldier's Poem. So there's a lot of like big stuff, but there's some real kind of intimate songs on here as well. Some love songs like Starlight, some dance songs like Supermassive Black Hole, Map of the Problematique, and one of those, their trademark build, release songs like Invincible. There's a really cool tapping solo in it. So it's just like everything I want in Muse kind of encapsulated in one album. And I just think it's their best overall. So it is my number one, is a 5-star album. It won its year, and it was my favorite album of the 2000s. So, but only one 5-star from Muse. That may surprise people.
Especially, remember thinking in 2003, Absolution was kind of a slam dunk win for you, an album of the year. But have you seen them live?
No, I never have. And to my great shame, I haven't seen nearly enough people live. I have seen all of their concert videos. I've listened to pretty much every one of their B-sides and singles. And I think I probably know their discography better than any other band in the world. Maybe Zeppelin would be number one, but other than them, I don't know. I've always treasured Muse, so I've tried to listen to everything they've ever put out, which I don't usually do. So I do have a little, personal relationship with the band.
I'm glad I did this. I mean, they pretty much landed right where I kind of thought they would on the spectrum. One of my least favorite discographies we've done here. Not as bad as Billy Joel or the Eagles for me. But yeah, like I said, the main thing is just like, it's just not my flavor of ice cream. It's like all those adjectives that I said, they don't check my boxes really. I can't objectively think there's a whole lot wrong with them, but just, sitting down and listening to an album, the ones that I don't like the ones I gave 1.5, just seem like a huge waste of time for me. But I did get some things out of here that I didn't expect. The guitar work, for sure. I noted that, pretty interesting guitar part writer. I don't think they have as many like bad songs. Just it's literally just a cup of tea problem I've got.
Well, if you don't like the sound of Muse, you're just not gonna, there's nothing that you're gonna listen to that's gonna convince you otherwise. Clearly, this is right in my wheelhouse as far as music I like. I do think Bellamy's a very interesting guitar writer with his solos and the songs. Like he's not like a classic like metal head kind of writer. Sparser, especially on something like Dead Inside and Madness, like it just, you wouldn't expect those kind of guitar parts from a band like as big and over the top as Muse can be. And they absolutely can be the most over the top, I'm not gonna say pretentious, but just, a little ridiculous sometimes. But I love that. It reminds me of real rock and roll from the 70s. So I'm always going to dig it, and I'm going to dig them. But they're probably on the downslope of their career, let's be honest. So I don't know. I'm not like married to them. Like I'm not a super fanboy with this band or most bands. I think I can be pretty even with. So even though I love Muse, I can point out their flaws, and they're probably on the downslope. But the times that they gave me, I will treasure forever. So there you go. There's the Muse discography. I've seen a bunch of Muse albums in the comments for albums of the year, but I also am going to assume that a lot of people just do not like them at all. So yeah, it's very much take them or leave them. So leave in the comments. If you take them, you leave them. Your lists. If you couldn't even make it through the whole discography, that's fine. Put in the comments. Like the video anyway, despite your feelings on Muse, you can still like us. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Kramzer is going to be off next week. Jason and I will be tackling, trying to think of the best way to describe him. He's not quite country. He's not quite rock and roll. He's a little honky tonk, Bakersfield sound. Dwight Yoakam That'll be an interesting discography. Nothing like we've done so far. So I'm excited for that one. Kramzer has the week off. Following week, I will be off, and Kramzer and Jason will be tackling
Built to Spill, 90s alternative indie guitar rock classic.
I don't even know who that is, so I'm glad I'm taking the week off. Be sure to check out listographymusic.com. However, we're doing 1960, so vote on your favorite song. And of course, check out the whole series. We'll be going for the next, I don't know, year or so as we make our way towards the 2020s. As always, thanks for watching Listography. For Kramzer, the absent Jason, I'm Joe. See you next time.